So the recent focus of Government of India on startups has really made India one of the topmost, top 3 startup friendly ecosystems. And if I conduct it in the words of our Prime Minister, then he said that in this world of startups, it doesn't matter the kind of language you speak, but what matters a lot is the language you are able to code in. The power of your surname doesn't matter, but it gives you the opportunity to actually create the power of your own name. And when it comes to the startups, and that also based in the rural setup, then it's a long story of struggles, and then coming out of those struggles and creating a name for yourself in this big market. So today I'm going to talk about rural India and startups. When it is about a person residing in a rural setup, people generally prefer the salaried jobs because they have this in mind that, okay, there are a limited hours of work span, limited salary, and like a monthly salary. And they do not want to go in for any kind of challenge other than a fixed salaried scenario. And in the setup, when a young boy or girl, they have this dream of starting up their own business, then they have to face the agony of the household, the families, because they have this question that how will you survive? Mostly the status which the society has given to a salaried person that, okay, this person has gained education and now is going for a certain set of job scenario and is going to earn this much of amount every month, and it's a happy and contented life. So these kind of challenges when these boys and girls they face, then they tend to give up. They believe that, okay, it's fine to go with the flow of this comfortable life which the society feels that they need to go for. But then there are certain daring boys and girls in that setup who think that no, they can actually think beyond it. They want to actually take the family out of this fear of startups that know that only the salaried jobs are a comfortable set of life and they cannot think of anything beyond that. But when they think of all these things, it doesn't mean that, okay, it's a cakewalk for them. Actually, the problems are there. And few of these problems which I've personally faced as at present I'm residing in a rural setup, I'm going to discuss in today's talk. So when you think of starting up with something new, a business per se, then the first and foremost, the problem which stands in front of your face is this problem of insufficient capital, the money. The money matters, right? Though we say it doesn't, but it matters. Entrepreneurship indeed is risky, and having a sufficient capital, if you want to go ahead with this dream of yours, is very, very important, a sufficient capital. Actually, in the rural setup, people do not have that kind of insight into the things that how to go about it. Should they have some kind of savings? Should they take some kind of loan, some kind of mentorship or something? Actually, they are clueless. Basically, the traditional scenario is they'll take money from their parents and then they will go ahead with these things. But then what about the profits and loss? Because the family for them, your dream career or any kind of business or the startup which you are going for, if it's not bringing that return, then it means you are on the wrong track. So generally they tend to, again, listen to the society and give up. If I talk about loans, that of course there is an option by the government that they can go for the loans and they can have their own startups, then it is a long procedure. Applying for a loan, actually getting it, and the kind of time span it's going to take, the new business person or the person who's just starting up is not even aware of that. Usually, the people who guide them in those scenarios, keep in mind I'm talking about the rural setup, right? It's a different scenario. So when they take help from somebody, most of them would also befool them. They'll not guide them properly. So again, these young, passionate people who think about startups, think about all these things that the Prime Minister has said, this thing or that thing, they again tend to fall into the same trap of giving up. And according to a report based in 2019, it was revealed that every year, like more than 5 million startups, they come into the market, but then only 10% of them survive. And most of them fail due to this thing, insufficient capital or the money which is required for it. Then the next thing is the startups or the business owners, they fail to feel the current pulse. Current pulse means in the market area, what is going on, their own competitors and the people, the consumers, what are they looking for? What is going on in the market? We cannot ignore this thing. The best example which comes in my mind is the downfall of Nokia in this regard. And then the CEOs had to shed tears publicly. But actually, though I cannot compare the startups with Nokia, but actually Nokia was also a startup once. So we can compare. So these startup owners, the business owners, the entrepreneurs, who are based in the rural setup, actually, they feel that they have their the straight line of thinking that now I have got money from my family or through any way, now I'm going to start this business and this is how it's going to be. But they forget this thing that the scenarios have changed. The whole scene in the marketplace, it has changed. The consumer is more alert now. They have everything at the click of the mouse. Not even the mouse now, just the click of the thumb. People can compare the products. People can compare all the scenarios. People have door-to-door services. And then these startup owners feel that no, the way they have thought the things to be, and it's going to be like that. And life is never like that. So to understand this pulse, the current pulse, it's very, very important for anybody, whether the person is sitting in an urban scenario or in a rural setup. So mostly these startup owners who are there in the rural sides of India, they feel that they only think about their immediate vicinity, which is there in front of them. That people of my village or people of my rural setup, they only know this thing. But actually, this is not the scenario at present. People are more aware now. They are aware, they have become aware actually with everything, even through the television programs which have come recently. Not only the normal, the usual dramas or something, but actually related to the reality shows related to startups and businesses. Right? So we cannot assume that the consumer is not aware of anything which is going on around us. So other than the insufficient capital, this failure to feel the current pulse also adds on to this fire of failing up of startups. Moving ahead, the incompetent middlemen. You might think that this is not a very big deal. A person can take decisions on their own and they can carry on with their businesses. But actually, think of a rural setup there. People cannot, the business owners, they cannot even go to the bank and do the formalities, whatever is required, the paperwork, the official documentation of anything. They always require certain middlemen. And these middlemen, as I mentioned earlier also, would usually try to misguide them. If a thing can be done within a month, they would always try to drag it to 1.5 or 2 months. So this is a problem in those areas. And it is actually the responsibility of present-day graduates and postgraduates or people studying in colleges and universities to come up with some kind of idea where they can actually help the people sitting in the rural belt of India, where they can help them with something, some kind of data, information, hand-holding. This hand-holding is very much required, where they can help them with all these formalities, that how to approach a bank for loan, how to go there, how to do the documentation and everything. Because the people over there are not much, they are not tech savvy, right? They don't use computers as such, how to fill an Excel sheet, how to save your data. They are not aware of anything like that. During these previous talks, people were talking about 3D printers and even genetic setups in agricultural field. Our rural belt is full of agricultural setup, but they do not know all these things. They do not know how to manage a simple printer, what to say about a 3D printer or something, or it is beyond their imagination. Then there is means doubt about this gender or power or something. Like they feel that only a male boss can run the business and a female cannot. Now, why they have this thing in their mind? They feel that if they enter some kind of office, some kind of like a setup of a business owner, then they should or they must see a male person sitting there in front of them on the main chair. They still feel that no, if it's a female, they cannot deal with them. I'll add my personal experience into it. When people visit my office, they ask usually at the front office, can we meet sir? And they are very shocked actually when they enter and they see me, and I tell them that I am sir, right? But they have to learn this. Maybe while sitting in a scenario like Ludhiana, we do not feel like that. But in the rural setup, it is a reality. They still feel that they need to see a sir in front of them. And then being a boss, you cannot take all decisions on your own. You must have a team, which they are not aware of still. That they must delegate the responsibilities. They must have a team, a management, where a proposal is put up in front of a management, they decide on it, brainstorm, and then the decisions are taken. They still feel that I'm the boss, I'm the owner, I put up my money into it, so you have to listen to me. And here they fail, because then the team starts to break. And then they are actually left there in their office alone as bosses without any team. So this, here again, some kind of teamwork, some kind of mentoring by the young students of India can be, it can really help those rural scenarios where they can actually in a team kind of a thing can go over there, orient them with all these new techniques that in-house trainings in the field of hiring, taking decision, money management, everything matters. So it is actually the responsibility of the new graduates, the students, the young students of India, to orient them with all these things. Then, failure to plan ahead. It's very, very important for any business. Forget about the setup, be it an urban setup or a rural setup, anywhere, but thinking for the future. But here in the rural setup, they have this thinking or the feeling that, okay, for first 6 months, I have this much amount of money. I can move ahead with my business. For the 6 months, now with that saved money, they are able to do the things smoothly. And then they feel that now we are actually business people, the startup is running. Actually, it is not. You never know. In today's scenario, at every week, something new is emerging in the market area. But they feel that no, it's fine to just think of the present scenario and just let it be. As is always said in our country, that the country is Ram Bharose. So their businesses are also Ram Bharose. They forget actually to plan ahead for the future. Then the problem of power in the rural areas, epileptic power supply. See, the rural setup is generally about agricultural arena scenario, but then if you don't have a 24 hours power supply, then how can you work efficiently? You won't believe there would be unscheduled power cuts for 6 to 8 hours. It is a big problem for the startups. They really face many difficulties due to it, be it the agricultural setup, educational institutes, any office, the factories where the machinery or the equipment have to work. It's a really problematic area. The most important thing which I personally believe is inadequate creativity. creative power actually leads even a failed business to a new dimension. And in the rural setup, it is felt that creativity and all these are words, and you actually don't require them. You give them any kind of example of any new startup, any new business or anything, they would not think of anything, they would feel, aisa hi chalta hai. This is how things have been and this is how they are going to be. According to a report, like there are rare chances that a startup survives for 3 years in India. So usually they would fail up. Now the thing is that how to take or like turn the tables. If we say that these are the problems, that what are the solutions to it? What is the way out? Doing the opposite of all these points which we have just discussed, I think is the way out. If you go for some creative setup, in-house trainings, listen to somebody, some mentors, that this is how the business is run, it can really help. And this is important also, as India in this century is looking forward to having more and more startups, and we cannot ignore the rural belt of the country, which is the backbone of the country. So now the responsibility is on the students, the future of India, actually to not only think about the salaried jobs, but also to come up with some kind of planning where you can as a group go to different parts of the country, the rural belt especially, and actually mentor the people, guide them, tell them, handhold them that this is how we can take your traditional businesses into the future. Thank you so much.